the Silicon God, the story of how we taught lifeless matter to think. Picture a city at twilight, skyscrapers gleam. Below, cars weave through the streets, guided by invisible algorithms that synchronize the traffic lights with eerie precision. Phones hum in pockets, curating lives. Cameras blink, recognizing faces in the crowd. And above it all, an unseen intelligence weaves through the wires, a ghost that knows your name, your habits, your secrets. This is not science fiction, this is today. It filters your mail, suggests what you watch, and spots cancers a human eye might miss. But where did this ghost come from? To understand, we journey back to the 1940s, to smoky rooms where dreamers dared to ask a question as old as myth. Can we teach lifeless matter to think? Our story begins not with a machine, but with two unlikely minds and a single radical idea. Chicago, 1943. In a cluttered office sat two unlikely souls. Warren McCulloch, a neurophysiologist with a poet's heart. And across from him, Walter Pitts, a wiry 19-year-old, who had run away from home at 15 and taught himself logic in libraries. Together they wrote a paper that would echo through history. They proposed that the brain could be modeled as a network of simple units. Each one takes in signals, weighs them, adds them up, and fires a single output, yes or no, 1 or 0. A brain stripped down to pure logic. It was only ink on paper. But it planted a seed that everything to come would grow from. For the first time, thinking looked like something you might one day build. But their model was deeper than it looked. They let neurons feed back into one another in loops, and that single twist opened the door to memory and to learning. Then they proved something startling. A network like this could, in principle, compute any logical function you could describe. In other words, the building block of thought might also be the building block of a machine. They had dared to imagine that thinking itself could be engineered, and that dream lit a fuse under everyone who followed. If neurons could be mimicked, could a machine one day dream? Across the ocean, in the secret halls of Bletchley Park, another mind wrestled with a different war. Alan Turing built the machines that cracked the Nazi codes, shortening the war by an estimated 2 years. But as the ciphers fell, his thoughts drifted to a grander puzzle. Could a machine do more than calculate? Could it actually think? Years earlier, he had imagined a single universal machine that could, given the right instructions, behave like any other machine. That one idea is the reason a single computer can run a game, a spreadsheet, and a chat program. It became the foundation of every computer you have ever touched. But that raised a question. How would you ever know? So in 1950, Turing proposed his famous test. Imagine a human judge typing messages to two hidden partners. One is a person, the other a machine. If the judge cannot reliably tell which is which, then the machine, Turing argued, has achieved a kind of intelligence. Notice what he did. He moved the goalpost from what a machine is to what a machine does. Intelligence was no longer about flesh or soul. It was about behavior. Tragically, Turing's own life was cut short by persecution in 1954. But the question he planted refused to die, and others soon picked it up. And pick it up they did. In the summer of 1956, a group of young scientists gathered at Dartmouth College to chase exactly that question. John McCarthy coined a name for their quest: artificial intelligence. Beside him sat Marvin Minsky, who had built a crude neural network out of vacuum tubes and spare airplane parts. Their proposal was audaciously optimistic. They believed a single summer's work might crack language and reasoning. They left believing they were midwives to a new form of life. They had no idea how many winters lay ahead. The dreamers' confidence was about to meet a hard mathematical wall. Fueled by that optimism, the first real breakthrough came fast. At Cornell, a psychologist named Frank Rosenblatt built the Perceptron, a hulking machine of wires, dials, and 400 light sensors that could actually learn. Instead of being hand-programmed, it adjusted its own connections based on whether its guesses were right or wrong. The New York Times called it the embryo of an electronic brain. Rosenblatt promised machines that would one day walk, talk, and be conscious of their own existence. The public was enthralled. But beneath the spectacle, a fatal flaw was waiting. Here was that flaw. The perceptron could only tell things apart by drawing a single straight line between them. Give it a simple puzzle that needed more than one line, and it failed completely. In 1969, Marvin Minsky, once a believer himself, co-wrote a book that exposed this limit with cold mathematical precision. And because the world had been promised a thinking brain, the disappointment was brutal. Funding vanished almost overnight. The press mocked AI as a broken promise. The first AI winter had descended, a deep freeze that silenced labs and ended careers. Yet even in the deep freeze, sparks still flickered. At MIT, Joseph Weizenbaum built ELIZA, a program that imitated a psychotherapist using just 200 lines of code. Type, "I am sad," and it would simply reply, "Why do you feel sad?" It understood absolutely nothing. It only turned your words back into questions. And yet people poured out their hearts to it. That was the real shock. Weizenbaum was appalled to watch ordinary people bond deeply with a parlor trick. It revealed something about us. We are so hungry to find a mind that we will see one even where none exists. Around the same time, a program called HJarDLU dazzled in a different way. It lived in a tiny make-believe world of colored blocks. You could type, "Pick up the red cube," and it would obey, truly understanding the sentence. For a moment it looked like the dream had arrived. But its brilliance was trapped inside that sandbox. Step 1 inch outside the world of blocks, and it fell apart. And there was the hard lesson of the era. AI could shine in a tiny, tidy corner, but it drowned the moment it met the messy real world. If machines could not learn like us, perhaps they could simply be taught, one rule at a time. So if a machine could not yet handle the whole messy world, researchers tried fencing off small pieces of it. In the 1980s, they took a completely different path. Instead of teaching a machine to learn, expert systems fed it human knowledge directly, as vast libraries of if-then rules. Engineers became knowledge miners. They spent months interviewing doctors and chemists, distilling their expertise into thousands of rules of thumb. And crucially, when these systems gave an answer, they could explain exactly which rules led to it, which made people trust them with serious work. And for a while, it genuinely paid off. MySign diagnosed dangerous blood infections, matching human experts about 65% of the time. Dendrel decoded molecular structures. And a system called R1 configured complex computers for digital equipment, saving the company an estimated $40 million every single year. Real money, real medicine. This was AI finally earning its keep. But that very success hid an Achilles heel. Capturing knowledge turned out to be a nightmare, because experts often cannot put into words what they simply know. Worse, the systems were brittle. Add one new rule, and it could quietly contradict 10 others and break everything. As the rules piled up, the whole approach buckled under its own weight. By the late 80s, the hype had once again outrun reality. Companies that had poured in millions watched their projects collapse, and a second AI winter arrived, colder and longer than the first. Through the long winter, a handful of believers refused to let one idea die. Through that second winter, 3 researchers, Jeffrey Hinton, Yann LeCun, and Yoshua Bengio, refused to abandon neural networks. At conferences they were dismissed, their ideas mocked as yesterday's news. But they were quietly polishing the key that would unlock everything. Hinton championed a method called backpropagation. Think of it as a way for the network to learn from its own mistakes, like a student who checks a graded test, sees each wrong answer, and adjusts a little to do better next time. LeCun used it to build networks that could read handwritten digits. They were monks guarding a sacred text, waiting for the world to catch up. One day it would call them the godfathers of AI. Meanwhile, a quieter revolution was brewing, and it would hand those believers the one thing they lacked. Statisticians built practical tools that ran the world. Spam filters that cleaned your inbox. Search engines that tamed the web. And then the internet exploded, pouring out a flood of text and images on a scale no one had ever had before. Here was the missing piece. A learning machine is only as good as the examples you feed it, and that flood was exactly the fuel the neural networks had been starving for. The stage was finally set for a renaissance. But before neural networks took over, the old style of AI, brute force calculation, had its greatest triumphs in games. In 1997, IBM's Deep Blue defeated the world chess champion, Garry Kasparov, by calculating millions of moves ahead. In 2011, IBM's Watson beat the greatest human champions at the quiz show Jeopardy! But one ancient game, Go, had more possible board positions than there are atoms in the universe, far too many to brute force. Winning it, and truly understanding the world, would take not raw calculation, but a new kind of learning. That new kind of learning was about to arrive. In the late 2000s, three forces aligned like planets in a rare conjunction, and the field exploded. That renaissance needed three forces to line up at once. First, big data, from the billions of images the internet now produced. Second, cheap computing power, from gaming graphics cards, built by a company named NVIDIA to render dragons and explosions, which happened to be perfect for the math behind neural nets. And third, better algorithms, refined quietly over decades. At Stanford, Fei-Fei Li spotted what was still missing. A machine cannot learn to see without a massive library of labeled examples to study. So she built ImageNet, hand-cataloging 14 million images. It became the Rosetta Stone of computer vision, the shared yardstick that let the breakthrough finally happen. And happen it did. In 2012, Geoffrey Hinton and two of his students, Alex Krzyzewski and Ilya Sutskever, entered a deep neural network called AlexNet, trained on ordinary gaming graphics cards. The previous best method had an error rate around 26%. AlexNet crushed it down to 16. That single leap was so large it stunned the field. It did not just win the contest. It rewrote the rules of what was possible. Why did it work so well? AlexNet's layers mimicked human vision. The early layers found simple edges. The middle layers assembled those edges into shapes. The final layers recognized whole objects, a cat, a car. And once everyone saw it work, the dam broke. Within 2 years, every major lab on Earth had pivoted to deep learning. By 2015, error rates fell below 5%, beating human performance. Facebook hired LeCun. Google and Microsoft scrambled for talent. And one of those two students, Ilya Sutskever, would go on to co-found a lab called OpenAI, a name the whole world would soon know. But here is a consequence almost no one saw coming. AlexNet had been trained on a pair of NVIDIA gaming graphics cards. That one choice turned NVIDIA, until then just a maker of video game hardware, into the beating heart of the entire AI economy. Almost every breakthrough that followed, including ChatGPT, would run on its chips, and it grew into one of the most valuable companies on Earth. It is the oldest rule of a gold rush. The surest fortune is not always in the gold. It is in selling the shovels. So the gold rush was on. And after decades of frost, the long winter was finally over. With deep learning unleashed, machines began to surpass us, first at the games we thought needed intuition, then at language, and then at the very code of life. Remember Go, the game too vast to calculate? Deep learning was finally ready for it. Enter DeepMind, and its founder Demis Hassabis. In 2016, their program AlphaGo faced Lee Sedol, one of the greatest Go grandmasters alive. Then, in the second game, came Move 37. AlphaGo placed a stone so strange that expert commentators assumed it was a glitch. It was not. It was a stroke of genius, a move no human would ever have played. AlphaGo won the match 4 games to 1. And that was the turning point. The machine had not just copied human play. It had created something genuinely new. The next leap would not be about playing, but about language. All these triumphs still shared one stubborn weakness. Before 2017, machines read language one word at a time, and by the end of a long sentence, they had often forgotten how it began. Then came a new design called the transformer that fixed exactly that. Its key idea, called self-attention, simply lets the model weigh every word against every other word, all at once, so nothing slips away. It was fast to train, and it scaled beautifully. The bigger you built it, the smarter it became. That is why the transformer is now the engine inside almost every modern AI. Deep learning was not only for games and language. DeepMind aimed it straight at biology's grand challenge. Proteins are the tiny machines of life, long chains that fold up into intricate shapes, and a protein's shape decides what it does. For 50 years, predicting how a protein would fold was so hard it was nearly impossible. Then, in 2020, DeepMind's AlphaFold cracked it, and the payoff was staggering. What once took up to 5 years and $1 million now took mere hours, and a few dollars of computer time. DeepMind then gave the results away, releasing the structures of 200 million proteins, free to every scientist on Earth. It poured rocket fuel into drug discovery and disease research. In 2024, its creators were awarded the Nobel Prize in Chemistry. With that engine in place, AI turned from understanding the world to creating it, first in words, and then in pictures. And once you have an engine that gets smarter as it grows, the obvious move is to build it bigger. OpenAI did exactly that. In 2019, their GPT-2 wrote text so convincing they were nervous to release it. In 2020, GPT-3 arrived with 175 billion parameters, the internal dials it tunes as it learns. And in November 2022, OpenAI wrapped it in a simple chat box and launched ChatGPT. It reached 100 million users in just 2 months, the fastest adoption of any technology in history. Suddenly anyone could talk to an AI. It was the iPhone moment for the field, and the race was on. By 2023, GPT-4 could see images as well as read text. Microsoft poured in billions. Google's Gemini and Anthropic's Claude joined the chase. The consequence reached far beyond tech. AI was no longer just a clever tool. It was beginning to reshape entire industries, from education to medicine. And if a machine could master words, why not pictures? Soon the machines began to paint. From a single line of text, Dalla turned words into surreal images. Stable Diffusion, released openly, let anyone create art on a laptop. The impact cut both ways. Artists embraced the new tools and feared being made obsolete by them. Legal battles erupted over the data these models had been trained on, often artists' own work used without consent. Creativity, once seen as our defining human gift, was now something we shared with machines. Having mastered language and art, the silicon mind turned to the universe itself. And then it reached for a body. Having learned to create, AI turned that same power on the universe itself. Beyond proteins, it became a general accelerator of science. It sifted telescope data to discover distant planets. It predicted the violent behavior of fusion plasma, inching us toward clean energy. It forecast the weather and designed brand new materials. And it did more than analyze what we gave it. It began to generate hypotheses of its own, suggesting experiments humans had never thought to try. Discovery itself began to speed up. But a mind that lives only inside a computer can think, yet never act. So AI reached for a body. Boston Dynamics built humanoid robots that could leap and even backflip, and four-legged machines that patrol factories. Tesla set out to put humanoid robots on the factory floor. Yet the challenges proved stubborn. The robots guzzled enormous amounts of power. The delicate genius of the human hand remained unmatched. And a single misstep by a heavy machine could be dangerous. Giving the mind a body, it turned out, was its own mountain to climb. And none of this, the seeing, the playing, the talking, the moving, would run without raw computing muscle underneath. So a hardware race was raging. Back in 2006, NVIDIA had quietly turned ordinary graphics cards into the engine of AI. Google then built its own specialized chips to go faster still. And as the world's hunger for computing power exploded, the chips themselves became a prize that nations fought over. Whoever controlled the hardware, it became clear, would help shape the future of intelligence itself. Which brings us to the questions that now hang over everything. All that hardware raised a startling question. Today's machines are still narrow AI, brilliant at one task, blind to the rest. The next milestone has a name. Artificial General Intelligence, or AGI. A machine with the broad, flexible intelligence of a human, able to learn any task, not just one. We are not there yet. But imagine crossing that line. Imagine not one brilliant scientist, but thousands of the greatest minds in history, tireless, working around the clock on discoveries we cannot yet picture. But that same power cuts both ways. A machine that can learn any task can also do almost any job a person does today, from the clerk to the lawyer to the doctor reading a scan. Whole professions could be automated in years, not generations, faster than our schools, our laws, and our safety nets can adapt. The promise is a golden age of abundance. The risk is that the machines take the work, and millions of people are left asking where they now belong. And here is the deeper idea. Intelligence is not a single ceiling with one step at the top. Think how far a human mind reaches beyond a chimpanzee. That gap is only one small step, and there may be many, many steps above us. So beyond AGI lies artificial superintelligence, ASI, a mind not one notch, but many levels above our own, thinking far beyond anything a human could follow. It stays theoretical for now. Its promise is staggering, but so is its danger, a power we might never control. There was one more way to push toward that general intelligence. Humans learn through many senses at once, and AI began to do the same. New models could read text, see images, watch video, listen to speech, and even generate a video from a written prompt, all in one system. One mind, many senses, edging ever closer to something general. And yet, true understanding stayed out of reach. Could a machine ever feel the weight of a sunset, or the sting of loss? Or would it always be a brilliant mimic, dazzling on the surface but hollow underneath? For years, Hollywood taught us to fear the wrong thing. The Matrix, the Terminator, machines that wake up, turn conscious, and decide to wipe us out. But that is not what keeps the researchers up at night. The real dangers are quieter and closer. And here is the unsettling part. Not one of them needs the machine to be evil. They only need us to keep being human. Let me show you the 6 that matter most. We are building towards superhuman intelligence faster than we are building the ability to survive it well. Start with the first risk, the concentration of power. The first truly superhuman system will not be a god answerable to no one. It will be a near god answerable to one company or one government. Whoever holds that leash gains an advantage over everyone else unlike anything in history. The danger is not the machine choosing to harm us. It is a small group of people, certain they are the good guys, holding a tool that no one else can check. Second, weaponization. And this one is not a prediction, it is already here. Artificial intelligence fights in real wars today. In recent conflicts, target selection systems have flagged tens of thousands of people, with a human sometimes given only seconds to approve a strike. Swarms of AI-guided drones now number in the millions, and the first fully robotic assaults have already happened. And in 2025, security researchers caught the first large cyber attack run mostly by an autonomous AI, an agent that carried out the great majority of the intrusion against dozens of organizations while humans barely supervised. The weapon does not need to wake up. It only needs a goal and an owner. Third, the control problem is still unsolved. We are getting better at making these systems powerful faster than we are getting better at steering them or even understanding them. Mostly does what we want is fine for a chatbot. It is not fine for a mind smarter than the people who built it. Fourth, speed is outrunning wisdom. Capability climbs on an exponential, while our laws, our governance, and our common understanding crawl in a straight line. That widening gap between what we can build and what we have agreed on how to use is exactly where accidents and abuses live. Fifth, the quiet erosion of human agency. Even with no villain at all, a world where a superhuman system makes the important decisions is a world where people slowly stop exercising the judgment that lets us govern ourselves. We are not conquered. We simply defer and defer until we have forgotten how not to. And sixth, there may be no undo button. Most technologies let us fail, learn, and fix it in the next version. A superhuman system in the wrong hands, or misaligned in a way we did not catch, may not give us a second try. The margin for error shrinks to zero exactly when the stakes are highest. Now look at the thread running through all 6. Not one of them needs the AI to be evil. They only need us to be human. Rushed, competitive, certain we are the exception, and unwilling to slow down while we are ahead. The capability curve is steep. The wisdom curve is flat. Closing that gap is the real work of this decade, And it is a human problem, not a technical one. So what can any of us actually do? The honest answer is that the leverage here is not heroic. It is ordinary and repeated. First, if you work with these systems, build one question into your daily work. Who can steer this and who cannot check them? Every system we design either concentrates control or spreads it out, either stays understandable or becomes a black box. Those small choices, made by thousands of ordinary practitioners, are a real part of how this story goes. You do not need to be at a frontier lab to practice that discipline. Second, keep your own judgment sharp and undelegated. The erosion of agency starts small and personal at the moment you stop checking the answer, because the machine is usually right. To keep using the tool while still thinking for yourself, and to show that to your colleagues and your children, is not a small thing. It is the very ability we are most at risk of quietly giving away. Third, if you have a voice, use it for signal, not noise. Clear thinking about these risks, without the everything-size conspiracy frame that lets people wave it away, does far more than outrage ever will. The measured version travels further and changes more minds. Fourth, pick the part you can actually touch. Governance, understanding these models, who gets access, education. No one moves all of it, and the people who try to fix everything burn out and move nothing. Choose the slice closest to your own work, and push there, steadily. And the quiet one, for the parents. Raise a child who can think for themselves and who is not afraid to disagree with a confident authority, whether it is a person or a machine. That is the very same quality we would demand of an AI worth trusting. The next generation having it may matter as much as any technical fix. In less than a single century, we have gone from McCulloch's logic neuron to machines that write novels, solve ancient puzzles, and dream in pixels. Each step built directly on the one before, the failures and the winters included. And it has led us here, to our first invention that can itself invent. So we now stand at a threshold. This same power could unlock cures, clean energy, and answers to the oldest questions of the cosmos. Or it could amplify our worst impulses. The silicon god is awake. Its power is immense, and its path is still unwritten. The story is ours to shape. What will we choose? And finally, we leave you with a few films that ask these very questions, and ask them beautifully. Her, about a lonely man who falls in love with his AI. The Matrix, on who really controls the world we think we see. Transcendence, about a mind uploaded into the machine. And Black Mirror, for the darker what-ifs, like the robotic hunter of Metalhead. Watch them, argue with them, and keep asking the questions we raised today. If this story moved you, subscribe, and join us for the next one. This has been Code Zen.